Halloween. And okay, I'm taking this orangutan suit off. Okay, that was my orangutan suit, which looked more like a gorilla suit from last Halloween. Just trying to be the orangutan from the Murders in the Rue Morgue. That's not the title, is it? Of the Edgar Allan Poe story. Anyways, in the spirit of Halloween, I decided to do another director ranking. And today's director ranking is going to be Dario Argento, master of Italian horror. So I'm just going to get right into it and start with his bottom movie, which is number 22, Dracula 3D. This film, well, it's at the bottom of the list, and it is definitely Argento's worst film. And honestly, I don't have much to say about it. It's just not worth watching. It's not even when I first saw this. It's a title called Argento's Dracula 3D. And two red flags came up. Number one, it had the director's name in the title, which is never good because it kind of it's like a bad attempt of trying to bring in an audience who's familiar with the director's previous work. And of course, it's in 3D in an age where CGI wasn't that great if you didn't have a really big budget. So, but what I wasn't expecting from this film was it to be boring. I figured Dracula 3D, directed by Argento, this should be one hell of a ride with lots of camp and blood but this was just bad all around and boring. So don't watch this film if you're a novice to Argento, because this is one of his worst. Don't watch this film if you like the Dracula story at all, or any Dracula films. Don't watch this movie if you are an Argento fan. Honestly, this movie has absolutely no merit. You can absolutely skip over it and be missing nothing. And I'd even say to the completists, pretend that this movie didn't exist. But since you're completists, you're not going to hear me. Anyways, so the next movie, we have Giallo. And Giallo is actually the genre name of the movies that Dario Argento used to do a lot back in his heyday, his early 70s, 80s movies. And the thing about Giallo, which is yellow, and it's in the genre, Giallo is supposed to be a reference to the yellow pages of cheap detective novels. And the thing about this movie is that it's actually not a Giallo. This movie almost feels like Argento's take on a Criminal Minds episode, and it's quite dull and not very well acted, and doesn't have a really coherent plot. And thing about Argento is that a lot of his movies don't have that well of a coherent plot, but it works that way. This one just didn't work as it was supposed to be, but I actually did enjoy this film because it was fun. And it's possible that Argento meant it to be this bad, because it has this very American feel, but maybe it's a satire, but a satire should really be evident that it is a satire. And it just seems like this one had unintentional humor, but at least it did have humor, and it was fun, adventure, other than Dracula 3D. So enough about those two films. Next we have The Mother of Tears. So after 27 years, Argento finally finished his Three Mothers trilogy, which started with Suspiria, one of his most well-known and most beloved movies. And so of course this film is going to be having high expectations, because it's supposed to be the end of an amazing trilogy from his youth, and it kind of falls flat. It stars Dario Argento, as a lot of his modern films do, which is Dario Argento's daughter, and her acting in this film is just not so good. It seems to me from these films I've seen with her in, it's either on or off that her acting is. And there's this, it's sad that this is supposed to be the end of the trilogy, because it just looks like a joke, and you can really see the budget coming out in this film. Is pretty obvious that the baby is a doll, and you can obviously see it when it hits its head and its hat comes off. And really, that could have been the sad thing about it is that it's a scene that easily could have been fixed by just gluing the hat to the doll, getting another doll. Like, were they that low budget that they couldn't get another doll? Like, oh, that's it. They could have easily fixed it by getting another doll, gluing the hat on, making sure that it was thrown further out so that it didn't hit its head on the way down, because you would expect to see blood from that collision as well. But honestly, they could have just cut that entire scene out in general. And just the fact that that movie contained that scene just kind of showed the sloppy production that went into this movie, which is quite sad. It's almost as if Argento just wasn't feeling this movie and didn't really want to make it. He just felt like he had to, because he promised to make it for such a long time. But it is enjoyable, even though it totally butchers the portrayal of witches. And that was probably Argento trying to make a comment on youth or something, but it just doesn't work compared to his other movie about witches. So now next we have, in the 19th place, Jenifer, an episode from the Masters of Horror series, which features different directors directing a different 40-50 minute-ish episode each week. And this one, I was kind of surprised when I found out that Argento was the director of it. I kind of watched it without looking at who the director was first, because this is probably his most Americanized movie and his least Argento-like movie that doesn't really have much of his trademarks, and honestly it could be directed by anyone and just wasn't too memorable. Just wasn't like a great story or anything, and it's easily skippable, though a lot of the Master of Horror episodes, like a lot of the other Master of Horror episodes I meant to say, it is a lot of fun, but not as fun as his other Master of Horror episode, which is going to be appearing further up the list. Okay, so number 16. Wait, no, I jumped a little. Number 18. The Black Cat, which is a segment from the film Two Evil Eyes, which was supposed to be an anthology series, but ended up only having 2 episodes that were made. One was made by George A. Romano, and one was made by Dario Argento. And they're both adaptations of Edgar Allan Poe stories. And, well, this is a second segment, and compared to George A. Romano's segment, it is golden. I was not impressed with George A. Romano's segment. It was just not very good. And overall, it was pretty forgettable, but Argento does pack a lot of his director trademarks into this short period of time. I believe it's around an hour long, and much better than his other hour-longish thing, which was Jenifer. And it is enjoyable to watch. It's definitely has some memorable scenes in it, and yeah. So